Change lives.
Cambiar vidas.
Change lives.
Change organizations.
改变世界
Change organizations.
Change the world.
And it is my delight to bring up our next speaker, Maile Lesica. Before the GSB, she worked in consulting as well as at Caribou Coffee. After the GSB, or for her summer internship, she is headed to Amazon. Maile, welcome.
So I'm looking up at the upper level, and I see Colin by himself, and I'm wondering if he's a little bit lonely, maybe? But luckily, Katrina and Romy have joined him, so it's feeling good. And I see Ann Beyer in the back, and I'm thinking about accounting and how I actually found out I liked it when I thought I was gonna hate it. And I see my house for next year, and my boyfriend, and then a lot of faces I don't know. My name's Maile, and I have ADHD. I also have allergies, so apologies if I sniffle during the presentation. But what I wanna talk to you today about is just a couple things. One, what's it like to have ADHD? Two, good news, most people with ADHD, by the time you get to be my age, we know how to deal with it and what those ways you deal with it are. And then the part that I think is gonna matter to each and every one of you is how, when you manage someone that has ADHD, how you can maximize that relationship. So first, what's it like to have ADHD? Well, there's some good and there's some bad. And I'm gonna get the bad out of the way first. So when you have ADHD, social relationships are actually kind of hard. Because let's say I was trying to bond with Jenna right now. I'm supposed to look her in the eye and ask her questions and show interest, but I'm thinking about my legs shaking and I kind of want to scan the room, and I'm not creating that one-on-one connection that's so important to forming those bonds. And when you have ADHD, you're forgetful. Any of my friends can attest to this, but in terms of like school and work, it takes me, if I don't like a task, it takes me a little bit longer to do it, and then I will forget the homework assignment in my room. And when you have ADHD, communication's hard. So I'm thinking, and the words that are coming out of my mouth they're behind where the words and the point is your words get jumbled because your mind's going faster than you can speak. But when you have ADHD, it's actually not all bad. You see, there's some awesome things about ADHD. When you have ADHD, you're really high energy. You're up here, and that can be fun, right? And when you have ADHD, although you don't focus on everything, when you find something that you're excited about and you focus, you are hyper-focused. I joke that I have an addiction to romance novels, and if I'm reading one of those, Tom can poke me, Tom, my boyfriend, 45 times, and I'm not gonna look up. I am in the book. And when you have ADHD, you're not a linear thinker. So most people go A to B to C. And when you have ADHD, we spend time on Z and Q and R. And that's okay, because it's actually kind of fun and creative, and you're not tied to what's rational. So now that I've told you a bit about what it's like to have ADHD, how many of you think you might know someone that has it? Very good, glad you raised your hands. The truth is, everyone probably knows someone that has ADHD. 7% of the US population is diagnosed with it. And the crazy thing is that number's actually underdiagnosed because women and high achievers find ways to work around it. And we do find ways to work around things most of the time. I joke that my best protection against credit fraud is the fact that I lose my wallet at least 2 or 3 times a year. I always get new numbers, no chance that I'm gonna get my identity stolen. But other things like with me being forgetful, we make lists. I make so many lists. In fact, I have my main points of my talk on my hand, just so I don't forget anything important. And that social thing I told you about earlier, so I was a brat when I was younger, really, really a brat. And got invited to nothing. And my dad, he's a child psychiatrist, was like, what can I do about this? It probably makes sense that I'm talking about ADHD, given that he's a child psychiatrist. Anyways, instead of giving up on me, I remember there was this birthday party. And birthday parties were a huge deal for me because as an annoying child, they were the only things I got invited to because everyone had to be invited to the birthday party. You guys probably remember that. So I was at this birthday party and I couldn't drive. I was in 5th grade. So my dad was there. He was watching on the sidelines. And I remember he told me before I went in, he might pull his ear. And if he pulled his ear, that was just a signal that maybe I wasn't validating someone. And I'm talking and I'm chatting with this girl and all of a sudden I see this. And it was a huge turning point for me because I could suddenly connect what he meant. He said, "You're not validating." I didn't know what that meant. And then I suddenly saw, and it was the beginning of a new Maile, a Maile that could connect socially. And today, it might seem like it was very, I guess, micromanaging of my parents, but I am so thankful that they took the time to give me these signals, because now I have great friends, and they're in the audience today. Thank you all so much. And I'm so happy for that. So my point is, when you have ADHD, you learn to deal with it, mostly. I say mostly because the working environment is still a new arena. And the inspiration for this talk actually comes from a pretty personal place. When I started my first job out of undergrad at a consulting firm, I think I was a little confusing for my manager. I bit my nails, I talked too fast, I didn't always speak, but when I spoke, I interrupted sometimes, and my presentations were not that good. And I remember, I think he just threw up his hands. I remember one day I walked by his office, and he said, "Maile, come in." And I walked in, and he said, "Honestly, you're working really hard at presenting, and you're getting a little better, but if it's that hard for you, maybe you should just find a job where you don't have to present." And that was hard. But it doesn't have to be that way. And all managers haven't not known what to do with me. In fact, when I was at Caribou, my manager, Michelle, brought out more in me than I didn't even know it was there. And so what I want to share with y'all today are just 4 C's, since we all love frameworks so much. 4 C's that can help you deal with someone that has ADHD and really maximize your relationship with them. So the first C I'm going to tell you about is coaching. You probably picked up on this, but when you have ADHD, you can learn to be different than you are. And so Michelle really she called on her inner coach, and she really invested in coaching me. And I remember she'd do things like, after every single meeting where I had to talk, she'd just give me 1 minute of feedback, like, "When you did this with your arm, it was really distracting." And that was really helpful, right? The other thing she did to help with me not getting my words mixed up when I communicated was 5 minutes before a meeting that I was presenting at, I'd just run through the headlines of my slides. And before you knew it, within the first year, I suddenly didn't need her coaching anymore. But her investing in me was very important in getting me to the place where I could give big company presentations to get people energized about our new product line, and I didn't have to worry about fumbling. Another coaching thing Michelle did that was really helpful was, at Caribou, it was a cube system, and there were really noisy boys. And they'd pop up over their cubes, and they'd throw a football, and they'd yell Maile. And every time they did that, I would be distracted for like 20 or 30 minutes. Really not productive. Michelle was like, "Lady, go get yourself to a phone booth, go where you won't be distracted, and work there." And that was really helpful. She coached me on how to minimize the chaos in my life. And so my first C for you all is coaching. Think about bringing out your inner coach. My second C is clarity. If you tell a person that has ADHD to do something whenever you get to it, or after the next task, I can promise you we are not going to get it done. And then you'll be frustrated and it just won't be good. What works much better is saying, "Get this done by Friday." And so when you have someone with ADHD, give them clarity about deadlines. A trick that Michelle and I worked on was I would make a list at the beginning of each work week of every single task I was going to do, big and small. And I would send them to Michelle, at least for the first year. I think I stopped after that. But she didn't actually micromanage me with them, but the discipline of putting myself to a list actually helped me execute much better than I had been before. And so my second C for you is clarity. Think about providing it. Find ways to provide clarity. Now, clarity and coaching, those both deal with minimizing the downsides of ADHD. But this part of my talk, the last 2 C's, are really about how you can maximize the upsides, because there are some. The third C is creativity. And you know how I told you in the beginning that when you have ADHD, you're not a linear thinker? Think about how useful that can be in a business context. Put a person with ADHD in charge of leading a brainstorm, or at least have them at the brainstorm. And those blue sky projects where you want to come up with a really innovative solution that's not based on really anything that's come before it, that's where we're really good, and use us there. So the third C is creativity. The fourth C is my favorite, and that's catalyst. When you have ADHD, you've got a lot of energy and you've got a lot of potential. And you as a manager should think about using the person with ADHD as a catalyst in your organization. There's two main ways I think about this. The first is energy. When you have ADHD, you're up and you're bringing people along with you, and so you know those projects that kind of drag at work and you don't want them to end? Think about deploying the person with ADHD on that project and seeing if they can add a certain spunk that wasn't there before. And then the last thing that you can use them as a catalyst is, you know how I said we can hyper-focus if you put us on a project we like? Think about how useful that is. Michelle, my boss that I loved, put me on snack food. I'm obsessed with eating. I do it most of my life. And she said, I know what I should have Maile do, snack food. I had a whole strategy written, a new product picked out within 2 weeks, and the orders placed, and then we rolled it to stores within 6 weeks after that. And retail, that's a fast turnaround time. And the reason that could happen is because I was so passionate about what I was working on. So with that, those are the 4 C's: coaching, clarity, creativity, and catalyst. And you know, from my dad pulling his ear and teaching me how to interact socially to Michelle helping me navigate the working world, I think these 4 C's can actually be hugely useful for people with ADHD, and I hope that you can share them one day with someone that has it. Furthermore, as I got to thinking about it, some of the C's actually they just seem like good management, and so I offer them up to you as that as well. Thank you.